that where you that you knew about the kind of the crossover of sort of the disability, the social construction of disability?
Yeah.
Before then?
Yeah, quite a long time before then. Yeah, I want to talk about the Fatty Olympics and then I'll say about that. So the Fatty Olympics was a thing that Kay and I produced in 2012 because I live in Stratford, which is where the Olympic Park is, where the Olympics were. And it basically, well, it's problematic to say the least. And so when we heard that the Olympics was going to be in our neighbourhood, we decided we wanted to do some kind of critical event around it, but you know, a really ridiculous one too. And so it took a while for us to get it together, but it ended up being a day of well, non-competitive sports, like rolling down a hill and getting very dizzy and spitting on the BMI chart. I don't know if everybody knows what the BMI, the body mass index chart was. The chart that was used to classify fat and thin bodies, and twirling, being pretty. And it was a day of real mayhem actually. We had it in this sort of community centre in West Ham, in Stratford, and we had an opening and a closing ceremony, an anthem, and torches, and everybody had medals who wanted one. We all spent ages making these bloody medals and handed them out. I mean, it was a really knackering day, and I have, well, in some ways mixed feelings about it, because the Daily Mail did come and pap us, which was just shocking. But also, yeah, God, wild memories as well of, well, in the diziometer, getting very dizzy. Simon Murphy made these pointed hats with little silver balls on them, so as you got increasingly dizzy and spun around faster, the balls, in theory, would spin out, but I don't know. But I'm a very happy memory of you. Twirling. As fast as you could.
It was just joyous. It was joyous because for other reasons, you know. For me, I mean, I'm not a sports fan anyway.
Oh God, me neither.
You know, and I know, and I say that having grew up on the Wirral, so you had to support a football team and all that. But so I grew up in a very sporty household, so have revolted against it, hate it. But also there's the whole thing for me about Paralympics, and so with the Olympics cometh the Paralympics, and that's a double-edged sword for disability rights community, I think, because there's such a lot on. Wow, look at them, aren't they amazing, and look at what they can do, and they're almost like normal people, aren't they? You know, it's that sort of rhetoric that we get, and I always sort of talk about how one of the things that annoys me about it is that everyone thinks that Paralympics are inspirational, Paralympians are inspirational, and the problem with that, it makes the Westerners look lazy.
Do you think the Fatty Olympics was inspirational? Did you think it made us look
inspirational? I think it was inspirational in a wholly different way, Charlotte.
It's quite messy, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a very messy day.
But I think that was it too, to find, like, even, you know, to find other people. I mean, there were many people not happy with the Olympics being, but for similar and different reasons. You know, we've connected on that. It's like that celebration of perfection and ability and strength, and how we value those things, sometimes to our detriment, was like, okay, we have that shared. It started the political awareness for me of how we had a lot in common with our life experiences. So it absolutely was that for me.
Yeah, it's great. So I knew about disability politics, I guess, from the early 90s. So I did a master's degree at University of East London, and the first person I approached to be a supervisor was a kind of Freudian feminist who told me it was all about the breast. And I was like, oh my God, I cannot work with you. I cannot work with you. And I didn't know why, I didn't have the language at the time. I just thought, I can't. The first thing she said to me was, but of course I am an intellectual. Like, I cannot work with you. I went home and was like, totally stunned. Oh God, I'm going to do this master's, but I can't.
Who talks like that anyway?
She did. Wow. Anyway, so I spent the next 2 years complaining to the woman who did become a supervisor about this early woman and saying, I'm not an intellectual, I'm not an anyway. So we didn't talk about the breast or anything like that. But what Jenny Corbett, who was my supervisor, her background was she was interested in special education, and that is probably not a term that's used now, but it was at the time. And And she said, Charlotte, have you ever heard about this thing called the social model of disability? I was like, no. I didn't even really know how to use theory at that point. I was so green. But she was very gentle and encouraging with me, and gradually introduced me to, I read Jenny Morris's books, because later on we were published by the same publisher, and also David Heavy's The Creature Time Forgot was just absolutely really foundational. And Mike Oliver's Politics of Disablement as well is like one of the books that I feel that has made me really. It's such a fantastic piece of work. And gradually things started to sort of slot into place, and the work that I ended up doing, which ended up being my first book, was about applying a social model to fat and thinking about what is very similar. So thinking about, fat being something that might not be about health, which is how it's typically framed, but about how people are socially positioned and the social barriers that are put in the way of, living a life, being fully acknowledged as a person, but also having a way of critiquing charity, I suppose, and critiquing medicalisation, and critiquing those kinds of interventions that are supposed to normalise us, and taking pleasure, well, not just pleasure, but for me, power and a sense of, being okay in the world through understanding and appreciating my marginalisation, I suppose, or kind of feeling okay about that, not wanting to be normal. So that was how I got into it. So I guess by the time I started listening to Ouch, I never really felt part of a disability community, and I still don't really, which is why it's amazing being here and being part of Barnafest. That feels very new to me. But I had known, about theory and about politics, and known that there was this movement for quite a while before Ouch. But Ouch was the thing I was like, yeah, here we go. These are people I really want to be made to. Yeah.
And look at us now.
I know.
Well, I remember when we first really had a great conversation at mine, and just you reeling off the authors that Charlotte just reeled off, was like, yes, gentlemen, yes, my God, I mean, all the, and so I don't know where people are in their own understanding of the social model. I mentioned about, for me, I had a light bulb moment, which sounds like, so I guess I had gone to uni, so I was like 19. And that's kind of relevant because, I wasn't a stupid woman that's being judgmental about myself. I was pretty smart, I think. But I just didn't want to be me. Totally didn't want to be disabled. I had the trappings, of course. I didn't look much different, just younger. I had a different wheelchair back then. But other than that, I would not call myself disabled. I didn't want to be part of that gang because that gang was rubbish. And that gang had nothing sexy or attractive about it and nothing going for it. And it was almost like as soon as you admit being part of that gang, you might as well give up. And so I wasn't in that gang. And then I went to university, but I had gone to a mainstream school, so that explains some of that. I had not had anyone around me to give me any politics or any sense of self or identity or worth, or that actually, oh God, you understand what it's like to be me. That wasn't happening to me.
Not even stuff like feminism or anything there?
Despite going to an all-girls school, funnily enough, no.
Ooh.
Isn't that ridiculous?
Yeah.
But it's quite a middle-class all-girls school, so it was all about achievement.
See, I had punk on my side.
See, I just missed that, and I was just like, I was kind of like Sandra Dee, really.
Oh!
Do you know what I mean? Really, I was so good.
Am I Rizzo?
I was so, yeah, you are. I mean, I think I'm getting there. I think I'm kind of a pink lady now, but I was not. Do you know what I mean? I had the yellow skirt. I actually did. If I could have skipped, I would have. It was like that, really. Don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't wrap my hair, really. And a lot of that was because I couldn't, because my mum was like my carer, my personal assistant, really, my carer back then. And so I couldn't be normal. I mean, you can as a disabled person, that's not an inevitability. But I just didn't. I couldn't get drunk, I couldn't smoke, I couldn't do any of the rites of passage or at least explorations, So, so uni became this escape from that, and a difficult escape, really, because I didn't know what I was escaping from, if that makes sense. But then I started to have to mingle with other disabled people, and they were quite nice, actually, and I quite liked it. I know. And we started to have fun, because there was this I went to Nottingham Uni, and it was quite a big, it was about sort of was like, oh God, I've got it. And essentially it was just a blue van with nothing in the back.
Whoa.
You know, like now, there's no way that would happen. It'd all be secured with... Yeah, oh, the number of times I fell out. But that was it. I've gone now from being Sandra D to rolling around in the back of the van with all these young volunteers and all these other disabled people who were actually quite cool, you know. And then, this isn't my condition in case you're sitting there wondering, but my mum had signed me up to young arthritis care just because she had. And she just wanted me to feel part of something, right? And they would do a newsletter about 3 times a year, and in the newsletter it had this personal development course. And I don't really know, it was just like, do you want to be more confident? Do you want to feel happy being... And I just saw it was a residential, and I went on it. And that was it. The first evening, one of the first questions was, are you a disabled person, or are you a person with disability? And I was like, well, I'm neither, really, but I have to be one, I'm a person first. That I felt very strongly about that. I'm not disabled, it's a minor part of me. And there was this woman there, and she was older than me, and I sort of looked at her and I was like, oh, I hate her. Only in that way that you hate people that you really want to know, or I do. It's just like, look at her, she was Rizzo. I hate Rizzo. I'm not Rizzo, but I hate you. And so I didn't like her, I didn't like anything really. And then they sat us down, sat us down with the flip chart and started to talk about, so what have you got in common? And we went around this group of 15 people, your traditional sort of training course, and it's like, what are the things that stop you doing what you want to do in your life? And and it was access, and it was public transport, and it was attitudes, and it was barriers, and whoever we were, whatever age we were in that group, we all had this stuff in common. And then, by the end of that first night, it was stunning, because it was like, you know what, you mightn't be able to walk, and you mightn't be able to wipe your bum, and you mightn't be able to do all these things, but actually the thing that really stops you is external to you. It's not you. It's not the individual. It's not your medical condition. It's not, fuck me, sorry, but really, it was the most liberating thing. I don't know if it's like that for you, but it was like, oh my God, years of feeling like, because if I can't walk, and if I can't go up steps, if I can't get cured, then my life is always going to be rubbish. But when someone says to you, the reasons your life is rubbish isn't about your body, it's about the way the world is organised, it's about capitalism, it's about the way we structure our society. Mind-blowing. In one day, life changed. And that woman who I hated became my best friend and my soulmate. She was incredible. So I get the social model of disability, and I get the most incredible Sue Crotcher, the most incredible woman in my life. Because she was like, she reinforced everything. And she was married, and she had a career, and she had all those things that I thought I could never have, because I thought it was this medical condition that stopped me, and that individualisation. So that, that sort of, as soon as you start to take it away from the individual and make it, and of course then it makes sense once you, so then this was just on a flip chart with some stick people, right? And then, but you realise there's a whole philosophy or, theories of the social constructionism of discrimination for groups. So, I would say under the social model, I am disabled by the barriers, by oppression, by institutionalised discrimination, not by the fact of whatever Latin term my condition is. Incredible. And then that works for racism, it works for gender. It's not about what colour you are, it's not about what, but still recognising that our bodies are different.
Yes.
As well.
Yeah. I mean, it strikes me as quite a tender conversation, because we are also different.
Yeah.
But it feels like a conversation where we can look at the things we have in common as well as the differences, and try and sort of, I don't know, learn from each other and support each other, and I don't know, find some way of moving together, I suppose. But thinking about what we do have in common, certainly the body is very basic, having kind of these weird, unruly bodies, bodies that don't fit, bodies that are restricted in many ways. Stacey and Bethan later on are going to be talking about flying, and I think, yeah, well, flying is always for me about a case of, well, and for you as well, getting on that bloody plane, and you know, getting the seatbelt extender and all that kind of crap that goes along with it. And for me as well, growing up with this sense that my body was completely wrong, and there was a whole kind of apparatus, a family apparatus. I mean, nobody joined me up to young arthritis carers, but actually nobody joined me up to Weight Watchers or anything like that, which is a very common story for young fat people. But there was this great sort of concern, family concern. My mum was a nurse, about my body being wrong, and especially around puberty as well. And it's totally gendered too, but about surveying me and trying to control me too. Yeah, which I mean, the social model is so useful because it is about seeing yourself within a social world really, rather than it just being you. And that's not just a way of understanding it, but it is also a way of connecting to other people and recognising the things that are similar. So yeah, I mean, I started thinking about the body, but medicalisation, I mean, that also seems like absolutely profoundly central to both of our experiences. There's this fantastic, well, there was this fantastic group in the early 70s who I admire greatly called the Fat Underground. One of the people involved in that was, well, it's gone through many names, but at the time it was called Aldebaran, and she wrote that our problems are, as fat people, our problems are not health problems, but they're not about medicine, they're about their political problems. Well, that's totally the social model. But do you want to talk about medicalisation as well, or your experiences with it?
Yeah.
Mine is also all about dealing with bloody doctors, awful.
Yeah, I think that because if the problem is always, isn't it, is the problem is you, and the problem is a medical problem, then your world becomes about doctors, and the power is in the hands of the doctors and the medical profession.
And I love what you say in the Sister Suicide, the musical, about not wanting to give doctors more power as well, because they're already very powerful figures.
Yeah, they just are, even how they look at you. I mean, you know, the judgments that they make and their own prejudices, it's their, you know, and what they believe you should be. I know I've told you this before, but I had a terrifying consultant, right? And one day I was wheeled in. I had a manual chair. I didn't have a power chair. I can't believe didn't have a power chair back then. Nobody thought to go, why haven't you got a power chair? Anyway, pushed in. She just looks at me, doctor, and goes, I'd rather see you crawling on your belly than be wheeled in that thing. And you know, you think, what message? That's basically saying this equals bad. The only good thing is to be on two legs and to walk. That's the prize. You know, we talk a lot around disability about it's about cure, or it's about normalisation, or it's about care and being shoved away, or it's about kill. I mean, really, it's about eugenics then. In many ways, it absolutely is. So that's it. That's the model. It's about you get better, you get as normal as you can when you get up.
I couldn't agree more. And also, I think for me, I'm just flashing on my second most recent experience of being encounter with a medic. It's also about instilling fear in your own view of things. I've got a motherfucking PhD in fat, Liz, and I go to the doc. In fact, I was a nurse, right? And I couldn't get the appointment with the nurse that I wanted to see, so I went and saw this guy. And I said, the reason I went was I was kind of concerned about my cholesterol, because I had a test done ages ago, and they said, oh, it's a bit borderline, and you have to come back. I said, oh, okay, I'll come back. So I thought, I'll go there and I'll ask for a cholesterol test. And the first thing he does with me is he wants to take my blood pressure, but the only blood pressure cuff they've got is one that's emblazoned with, now, which drug is it? It's some weight loss company. It's like a weight loss drug cuff, and this drug has been like implicated in people's deaths. It's bad news. And this is the only large size cuff they have, because if they use a little cuff on the arm, you're not going to get a good reading. Anyway, he's fumbling around. He can't get a good reading. He's getting angrier and angrier with me about it. He ends up getting quite a high reading, because by that point we're both kind of going. In the middle of the floor there's a scale, which I imagine is his only diagnostic instrument. When I say, actually, I don't want to be weighed, he can't believe it, and he does this kind of like type thing. I mean, he decides to give me tests for diabetes and various other things, but don't have any problem with and I'm not at risk for, and yeah, but he's decided for my own good that he's going to do that. So I leave that place, furious with him, furious that I haven't been able to convey to him, fuck off, furious about like getting this you know, a blood test voucher thing for blood tests that I don't want and don't need, that I ended up not having to use anyway. You know, I feel so angry about it and trying to find other ways of getting a cholesterol test that don't work out. And then, you know, 6 months later I have to go back to the clinic and see another nurse, and that's organised, and oh, lo and behold, my numbers are fine. And it's just like, but to me this whole interaction with this nurse was about, you know nothing, I'm the expert here, and he's the guy as well, and there's something to do with that. This kind of, not just a disbelief or kind of bemusement that I might have some kind of idea about my own body too. It was completely disempowering. It was actually amazing. It was like a masterclass in how not to be a bad patient.
I think, isn't it, like, because I had recently a really amazing experience with the medical profession, and that warranted talking. You know, I was like, it was really good, because usually it's so shit.
Yes.
You know, and it was gynae, and you can imagine, you know, my hips open like the size of a Mars bar, not much more than that. This is it, basically, right? And well, it's fine, to be fair, yeah. And I don't know why I said a Mars. I've never said that in my life, but anyway, an interesting weekend for me and Joe, my partner. But it really was like, but yes, so, you know, stirrups, oh dear God, it's and you just know that you get there and you're just like, yeah, okay, this is how bad gynae, I'm amongst friends, right? It's been so bad once when I went to gynecology, is that it involved, because I couldn't use the stirrups, it involved 2 nurses holding each leg.
See, I have fantasies about that.
I think my Facebook status was, does this count as a threesome? During the obviously I'm tweeting and Facebooking at the time. But they're talking to each other as I'm lying there and they're holding my legs, do you know what I mean? So there's something quite dehumanising.
Yeah, you're me, basically.
Yeah. And so therefore when I went really recently, they didn't kind of do that, right, well, we've got the normal thing here, but obviously, you know, and even if they're not saying that, everything else that they look like and how they are around you says you're trouble or difficult, and this, we've got so many patients and we're running late anyway, you know, but they were, right, how about we try this extent? They worked, the 2 nurses were stunning, and they worked to get something that was brilliant. They rigged something up without me feeling, you know, of course I'm lying there having to make jokes because I'm feeling all, you know, and it's what I do. And it's for me it's an audience, to be fair. And even 2 people is enough for me. So that's good. And then the consultant comes in and he's amazing, really. And it was joyous, but I compare that with the 2 legs being held, or the way we're so medicalised. But when you began to talk about that, I was thinking, Joe reminded me of this the other day. I talked about my soulmate just before. Anyway, my soulmate died. Yeah, sorry, death. I told you. So she died like 7 years after I got to know her, and you lose your soulmate, you're devastated. And I grieved badly. Well, I really struggled after her death for about 2 years. So about 6 months after she died, I couldn't get out of the house, I couldn't do it, really struggling. And I went to my GP, who I had a long-time relationship with, you know, knew me and my health conditions and all that. Went to her and I said, look, I'm grieving, this has happened. And she goes, you know, Liz, I really thought you'd come to terms with being disabled. And it's like, I think it's understandable I felt like I did. My friend died out of the blue, and was a major part of my life. But then, you know, doctors, and this is just a great example of how everything is reduced to your medical condition or your body. but not in the way that most of the time that the world thinks it is, and not to the degree that it is. You know, so if we're looking at percentages, my body's problematic 10% of the time. The other 90% of the time, it's the other shit. And that's it. But people think it's the other way around.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I don't know, as we're talking, I'm flashing on policy, I suppose. Like when you're encountering this kind of medicalisation, it can feel very lonely, and you can feel as though you're up against, you know, not just one mountain, but mountains and mountains of you know, things that are just insurmountable. And I suppose I'm thinking about, well, I wanted to mention, you know, the World Health Organization, their report on obesity, which I'm absolutely obsessed by, which they published in 2000. So hatred of fat people was around before then. It was very bad. But this report is what propelled it into policy. And the report was supported by people who, surprise, surprise, had vested interest in weight loss too. So yeah, but it became, instead of something that was between you and your doctor, it became something that was about government policy. And so things like in 2004, the Foresight report was the thing that was built on the World Health Organization report, which is all about obesity epidemic, policy in the UK, and now, you know, sugar tax, all that kind of stuff. And I suppose I was thinking about, yeah, the very big picture of that and how it impacts on people and these very kind of, like, for example, if I said to the nurse, you know, why are you treating me like this? You know, I can imagine that he would have a whole stack of stuff to back up his, you know, very rational, common sense understanding of things. Whereas if we pipe up, it's like we're the, I don't know, we're being unreasonable, or, you know, it can't quite be right, or where's the evidence base, or stuff to do with that.
Or I think that we've got issues, or we're in denial, or we don't want to admit that, you know, oh, well, things aren't so great. And it's always about our attitude, I think, which is really hard. You know, those tiny encounters every single day are the wearing things.
Yeah, and I'm thinking about your GP you're talking about. It's always like, you know, your body's supposed to speak for you in some way, but actually, then maybe you may also be a person and just going through whatever you're going through too.
I guess that, you know, that's one of the major things with us, isn't it? Is that people will look at, you know, we walk down the street together. What the hell do people think? You know, what do they think when they see me? What do they think when they see you? Because it's based on all the rubbish messages that they might get about fat, that they might have around disability. So even, you know, and that's it, isn't it? And that's what we share. That before we even have an encounter with someone, they've already made up their mind what our lives are about, and what our issues are, and who we are.
Yeah, I really enjoy messing with that though.
Yes.
A lot. So one of the things that
Tell me more.
one of the things that Kay and I do sort of sporadically is we have this kind of non-banned thing called homosexual death drive, and we performed have tended to be kind of sort of bands type thing. So you know, 4 people with guitars singing a song, you know, trying very hard, and then we can't really play anything. I'm a recorder. We don't really have much musical skill, but that doesn't stop us. And I don't know, they see like 2 fat middle-aged women, and you get the feeling they think that we're going to be like Dawn French or something, and you know, just I mean, we are funny, but also not funny as well.
Funny, not funny.
Yeah, funny I really love doing in performance, and I think there's an element of it in swagger as well. Is people, will expect you to be jolly because that's one of the stereotypes, or self-effacing, or you know, somehow sort of apologetic, and I really enjoy biting their throats out, basically, in performance, and you know, wiping those smiles off their faces too, which is I get an enormous amount of pleasure from that. It's very aggressive, and I'm working on it. I do have my own issues, it's true, but
Well, you have to do it for you, because I always contend that it doesn't really matter what I do. People will still go, oh, you're amazing. You're amazing. Just for getting up every morning. Do you know what I mean? I can do assisted suicide musical, which I think is I'm very proud of it. I think it's an amazing show. It's not being egotistical. I worked really hard on it. An amazing cast. But you can still come out and people go, wow, you're incredible. Yeah. But it's tinged with that, because I had low expectations
Yes.
because of who you
I
are.
feel compelled to read you one of my definitions from my my thingy, which is WS.
I do love, yeah.
You fight for me.
Say that again.
You fight for me. When people feel scared and powerless in the face of fat hatred, they call on someone they think is better experienced than them to fight their fight for them. Sometimes they want that person to say something scientific and therefore authoritative to a fat folk to transform them. And sometimes they want to instigate an exciting fight in which they are safe and removed, innocent, and from which they can learn some moves. This tactic means that the frightened person doesn't get to develop their own power in speaking back. It reproduces the supremacy of certain forms of knowledge and communication, like science or debate, and it adds to the work of more experienced activists, who may be just as vulnerable as anybody else, perhaps close to burning out, a dehumanising activist strategy. And I feel like that's what happens when people say how amazing you are, how amazing. It's like, shut up, you don't be amazing. I'm sick of it. Don't be amazing.
Let's have an amaze off.
Yeah,
You know.
amaze.
But I think that's one of the things I learned from you, because I'm still, you know, that big element of me, of Sandra D, really struggles to not please or be liked, you know, hence lying there in gynecology having to make everybody laugh, you know, because yes, that is about who I am and it's my career, but and a survival tactic, but I can't be evil because, you know, it's like I really want to lie there and cry or go, oh God, but you just know they'll go, well, we once had a disabled person in and she was miserable, so because they're like that, and I struggle with that. I had an audition recently. I've had 4 auditions in the last 5 years, and one of them was for Silent Winner. So you know, it doesn't matter being in the BBC. You still get shit all because there's very few roles for disabled people. So these are prized. So I get this audition. It starts very well. It goes to pants. It was horrible. Not because they were horrible. I was shit. I just had a bad day. I had a bad audition. Not surprising because I've done so few. Devastated because I'm a perfectionist, so I'm not happy with my own performance. Okay, that's fine. However, there's not only that judgment on myself, there's also, yeah, but now won't they be going, well, you know what, we did want to see a disabled person for a role and they were a bit they can't even read lines. Do you know what I mean? So there's something about when there's so little representation about who you are that I take on anyway too much, that I think my behaviour or how I am then reflects on our entire community. And I think part of that is imagined, but I also think it's real as well.
Yeah, I mean there's a great sense of responsibility because there is so little. At the same time,
Do you feel that?
Yeah, in some ways I do,
sometimes.
but less sometimes. Yeah. But it's funny hearing you say that because I think, you know, one of the things that we both do, I mean, we're total killjoys. And you know.
I love that.
Yeah, and we say the awkward things, you know, with assisted suicide, these sort of things that, you know, nice, decent, dignified people really don't want to hear at all. And I feel that often my role is to say, actually, it's not how it is. Yeah. So, yeah, there is a sort of element of that too. But yeah, there's a sense of responsibility. I mean, basically, perhaps we just both want the world to be a better place. And come on, hurry up, chop chop.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. So, what else did I want to say is similar? Yeah, I don't know really. You've been part of the political movement. Do you want to say anything about that? I mean, you feel very much part of the disability community, whereas I don't, and my relationship to the fat community is quite mixed really.
I was going to say, have you, because what the disability rights movement now is, and I'm not quite sure, it's very much changed. It was in its heyday, you could say, in its 80s and the 90s, and I think when we got the Disability Discrimination Act, it petered out to a degree, but also government funding means that our organisations that were run and controlled by disabled people, and Dardar Fest is one of the few actually left in the UK where we're in control of our own arena, really, and that's, it's ridiculous. You know, otherwise it's charities. And when you were talking before, actually, just links, I was thinking the industries around our world. You know, there's a real vested interest in cure and care. You know, you think of it, really, whether it's care homes, whether it's the rehabilitation industry, where, you know, partly I didn't have a wheelchair for years, electric wheelchair, because they cost more than a small car, an electric wheelchair. I mean, ridiculous. But the manufacturers are planning on the fact that a charity will buy it for you. Let's not even get into children in need. Jesus Christ. I loved your status yesterday. I was like, yes, thank you. It's usually me putting it up there, and it's like, yeah, burn Pudsey Bear. You know, I want to protest it outside children in need with a whole gang of other disabled people. It's the most violent response I've ever had at a protest. I've protested a lot. We were spat on. People threw coins at us. It was just because you said the killjoy. You're right, actually, because they were there. They'd been sitting in their vats of beans raising money for the underprivileged, and along come the people, the adult version of who they're raising money for, going, we don't want this. Yeah, we want equality. We want to be seen as equals, not as charity cases. All you celebs, just give your money. BBC, just use the money that you're putting on this on for, and put that to those that need it. You know what I mean? Don't do all this stupid I look great for helping you.
I think Pudsey should join DPEC, actually.
I mean, he's got one eye. He's disabled. It's ridiculous. Anyway, I've lost my thread, but carry on.
Well, you're talking about these industries around, and I think one of the big differences is in the way that our, I don't know, impairments are monetised. And so, and the way that I think it's different is that, weight loss is so culturally normal, in a way that, say, getting a charity to buy your wheelchair, that seems much more within a medical, or I don't know, it seems more hidden, I suppose, less just totally every day. But then you would take back care homes, which I haven't really thought about, which I think actually,
You just look, there's a lot of money to be made.
Yeah.
A lot of money. What's going to happen if there weren't disabled people? There'd be a lot of people out of careers.
Yes.
And there really would.
Yeah.
So it's this weirdness, is that they want us all, there's that pressure to be normal and to be cured, and yet really there's not, because that'd be the same in your world, presumably. Be thin, be this way, look this way, and you're healthy and attractive, and that's normal and that's desirable. Well, then if everyone was, there wouldn't be an industry.
Yes.
It's messed up that really being told one thing, but actually people don't want that, because then they wouldn't have their careers.
Yeah. The way it is industrialised is kind of different, I think. And also the charity aspect is different. I mean, there are obesity charities, so whenever there's a story about the fact in the news, they'll call up the National Obesity Forum, who I realise don't even have an office, they have a PO box. How cheap is that?
That's just someone in their living room.
It is, isn't it? It's actually, I know it's one guy who lives in Chiswick.
I thought they lived in Chiswick, enough.
Yeah. Anyway, so they call him up, BBC gets him blower to him every time, and he gives him some kind of soundbite. But that's it's big power, but it's the extent of that power, and it's small, really, I guess, compared to the way that charity operates in disability.
If we talk about differences that we have, and we talked a bit about this recently, is that when I was telling somebody about doing this lecture sort of today conversation and what it was about, and it was a friend, and they were quite kind of that sort of like, what have you got in common with fat people? It was both derogatory towards fat people and human. They found it really amusing. I was
funny.
Yeah, and I just thought, so that's it, isn't it? As well, is that when people talk about disability, there's that sort of preciousness and pity and fear of saying the wrong thing because they're poor and delicate and all of that. But I don't.
Not so
that's not with you. It's comedy and it's self-inflicted, and so that sort of placing of pity and blame seems different.
Yes, I think that's true, and I think there's sort of boundary making possibly around disability, and that would be seen like very, very far away from that because it's quote self-inflicted, which I think is really worth taking apart. But that could be a conversation. I think it's a big conversation. But I suppose what was the other thing I want to say about that? Well, you also come across quite a lot of disableism in sort of the fat world as well, which is about people not wanting to recognise themselves as disabled, or not feeling like it's a term that they might be able to claim for themselves or find useful in any way, which is really depressing. And also that there are different. I mean, might not experience the world as disabling in the way that, you know, super fat people are going to find it disabling too. And those conversations seem quite rare, really. People aren't really going there with it, which I think is a crying shame. But yeah, the blame thing is, I think, pretty central to it. When you're talking about yourself being seen as somebody, you know, to whom something, you know, a terrible act of God has happened to.
Terrible affliction.
Yes.
Yes, terrible affliction.
Or perhaps somebody that's had a horrible accident.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas
Struck down.
Yes.
It's that sort of language, isn't it?
Struck
It
down,
really is.
yeah. Whereas I've just been spending too much time on the settee.
Yeah. Too many pies,
Yes.
basically.
You know, get up, be a bit more active, that's what it takes.
Yes.
A little bit more activity, and then you'll be fine.
If you ate better.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. If I did, but only if I did more physio.
Portion
Do you know what I
size,
mean?
yeah.
You really I do. But I think that, you know, it reminds me of, I was talking with a friend of ours yesterday, and she was saying, you know, so December 3rd is International Day of Disabled People, and
And what are you doing on December 3rd?
well, I can't compete with up here because there's stuff happening up here, but down in London there's a workhouse cabaret. If anybody happens to be down there, it's a free event at Chats Palace, and anyone that can perform, wants to perform. In fact, there are people here who are performing, and the person I was talking to, I was like, she said, "Can I perform?" And I'm like, "Okay." I didn't know that you identified as a disabled person. That you do is great. And she, well, I'm an addict, right? And I think that's really, I think that's similar. That sense of addiction, you know, isn't that self-imposed? I think there are many people who have various addictions, and there's questions there if they fall within the disability terminology. And I would say, yeah, you know, if you have something, a condition or whatever, your conditions are rubbish work as well, but you're discriminating, you know, you think about the attitudes towards people that have an addiction. Let's use alcohol. If you're an alcoholic, you know, and the policies that are biased against you and the stigma, it's very, very similar.
Yeah.
And in that sense, but you know, I can see why people in different communities don't want to become part of the disability world, because as I said, I didn't. The fact is, when I mean, in a way I had no choice, but actually it was the most incredible thing, and it brought a community, and it brought understanding, and it made sense to me, you know. But then I think as I got older, so that was 25 years ago, now it's other communities that give me that, whether it's the queer community or whether it is fat activism, you know, i.e. it's other people who are different as well, where I get my strength from.
I really love those overlaps, and I suppose that it makes me think about, there are big, people are very invested in standpoints, so that only particular people can say particular things. And this has always bothered me, always, and you know, I won't rant about it, but one of the things that I did that really transformed how I thought about activism was in 2003 I started this kind of really weird, stupid project called the Chubsters, which was was supposed to be a girl gang, but it wasn't really. And you didn't have to be girl, you know, fighty or anything like that to be part of it. And if you wanted to be part of it, well, you got a little membership card and a badge. And
can you do it again?
I
really like joining things. That was my mum. Yeah.
And but I guess one of the big things for me about it was that anybody could be part of this. And I really like creating and being part of things that are, you know, not broad in that they're diluted, but broad in that they're kind of hybrid or mongrel or have they're mixtures, you know, they take from different things, they kind of, I don't know, I think that's really beautiful. I love that. And I also suppose I wanted to say, you know, we're talking about fat and disability, but they're not mutually exclusive categories at all. And yeah, just, I guess, wanted to acknowledge that. But there's something about, yeah, there's a wall around it, keep it safe and tidy, which I really dislike.
Yes, there's this and this and this festival for it, and you know, and I think, you know, I'm absolutely about celebrating those differences and keep, and you know, because sometimes we have discussions, or there are discussions about, should we have these separate things and events and festivals? God damn yes, because you go out there in the mainstream world and this gets watered down. Really, where's this conversation going to happen? You know, hopefully in other places, but talk and work things out
Yeah.
and be ourselves, I think. And, you know.
I agree. Yeah.
Can I just say, you mentioned about the Chubsters, and if you joined, you got a badge.
Yeah.
I got a present for you. So, do you see my arm? So
I
my
was
armband,
gonna say, I really like that badge.
armband. So I got this in Chicago. I'm bragging. I can travel. I'm amazing. Essentially, it's a sequin, a lovely sequin armband. It's meant to be a wristband, but mine's very thin. And it's got the sort of fist of power and activism. And for me, it summarises me in lots of ways. It's the glitz and the sparkle with the love of badges. So there's that. Anyway, me and Joe got this for you.
Oh, look at that! How lovely. Riots, not diets. Look, I'm going to check the times. I don't know how long we've been talking. Oh, yeah. See, I'm on therapy mode. I kind of said no.
Yeah. Well, then we both did, because I did, obviously we're winding down, hence the giving of gifts. Do you know what I mean?
Very good.
It's nice,
So just
isn't it?
see anything on page 2 that we should really say anything. Yeah, how do we like things to be? What do you like best today?
I wanted about quilt bag.
Oh yes, we can say about quilt bag thing. Okay. Well, so it's sort of on hiatus at the moment because we've been so phenomenally busy, but it can come and go at any time. So quilt bag is a kind of a queer get together that we do occasionally, and we usually meet at the Royal Festival Hall because it's such a weird space in London. You can just sort of turn up and have pizza there, and nobody really bothers you, do they? It's accessible and it's central, and transport is good, and we just hang out really, and it's and we invite people we like and want to get to know a bit, and people come and go, and it's called Quilt Bag because we think that Quilt Bag is the funniest LGBT type acronym going, but we also have an extra G for GIMP at the end, so Quilt Bag. I think there should be an umlaut on it somewhere as well. It's a heavy metal.
What is quilt bag? Can you remember?
Oh God, we always struggle with sort of queer,
Undecided.
yeah,
Intersex.
lesbian, trans,
Bi.
asexual, gay,
Gay.
GIMP.
Yeah. Got it. And the reason I thought it was a good thing to mention too is you saying it's sort of crossover is that our the thing that I love, I've learned loads from you about not giving a fuck, and being.
I do give a fuck.
No, but you do.
I do.
But you know what I mean. But in that not being responsible for everything, or being this representative, or I think when I heard you talk at the Welcome Collection, the thing that really made me, wow, one of the things was when you were talking about your activism around fat activism, and it doesn't even have to be that meaningful. Just do it. Just do something. Be out there in a world that's hostile, and do something that you enjoy or that's fun, or and you do that all the time. And I think that's so important that it doesn't have to be this planned big protest that's going to change the world.
It can be that too, and that is important.
So that mix of just having that absolute variety of experience, I think, and I wouldn't know that if we didn't share our worlds. And I think Quilt Bag is this great unstructured way of linking people who are great people come together in all sorts of different communities and identities.
It's lovely, isn't it? Yeah. And we have themes for it. We had an outer space thing where we all wore tinfoil hats.
Yeah.
And Spooky Quilt Bag was great when we were the Halloween was.
What was the sense one that we had?
Oh, Smelly Quilt Bag.
Smelly Quilt Bag.
Yeah, we had lots of perfume and got sniffing and nice and nasty smells.
Yeah.
So
you can have a quilt bag anywhere you like.
Yeah.
Essentially, it's a good thing to do. That's fun. Glamorous quilt bag was a good one.
Oh my God, Joe's leopard's quite up for it. Very glamorous.
Yeah.
And me and Sam, we had blow dries, didn't we, for that? We got our hair blow dried. Glamorous quilt bag. That's what I think.
and what they've been up, but you can say anything you want. And part of the reason for that is the connections that people have are incredible. The first times we did it, it was like, oh, you're not maybe from that world or that world, and I don't know you, but actually I do know you, and I have that in common. And it was brilliant, wasn't it, to just see all that happening. So, yeah.
Well done.
Patting my back, can't reach, but I'm patting my back. People are looking down, what's she doing? Is she okay?
I guess we should end. I don't know if people want to ask questions or what should we do now? Should we have 5 minutes for questions? Is there enough time? It's okay. I don't even know who's in charge. Bethan, must be.
I guess I'm in charge.
Yeah.
Like being
What
in
should we
charge.
do?
So I think if people have got questions or want to share thoughts or anything for the next 5 minutes or so, and then we'll have a bit of a break before Stacey and I will then talk about the second bit.
Hello. It's really good to hear you chat and talk, but one of the things I just want to ask a bit more about is how the definitions around disability are expanding. It's getting really exciting for DataFest, the kind of intersectionality that we're starting to represent. And it bothers me, though, that no one else seems to be doing that. There is a real problem in the society in terms of Trump and our right-wing government and the rise of neo-fascism and things. And I'm just wondering, where are those spaces where we can actually have this safety to connect, but stop putting their boxes on each other? Because my son is transgender, but he's openly gay and feminine, but he finds the transgender males reject him because he's camp. And it's just really interesting, all that you were saying about the sort of the crossovers. What's really happening, and why do these things don't happen that much? And what can we do to try and encourage them to happen more? There's a lot in that, but just like your views on it.
I think people are really frightened to talk a lot of the time. And there's a sort of, well, you're saying you worry about offending, which is real, you don't want to be offensive. And these are tender conversations, so maybe they can't take place everywhere. But yeah, maybe you just have to find your people and gently work out when you can have those conversations.
Maybe it is around things like, I'm not saying, I know we're doing the joking patting on the back, but spaces that are more are kind of queer, actually. Whatever we're taking that to mean, I always have a visceral feeling of what that means, but I find it harder to put down on paper in a way. So that it isn't just disability or race or gender, that there's sort of more, it's more about not identifying with the mainstream or not, and connecting on something in that, if we need to connect and we do, but why we're connecting has a different focus. And maybe that, I don't know, maybe that's it. So we're not getting boxed in, so we're not getting trapped in our own boxes as well. I like talking about boxes, it makes me laugh. Because I'm rude. But yeah, I wonder if it's about that expanding that. But you're absolutely right, Ruth, that these opportunities are shrinking as our definitions and our understanding of people and each other is expanding in some ways. It's shutting, the opportunities are shutting down. And I don't know, because what Dada's doing is really rare, and that's unfortunate that there's so few places.
I beg to differ.
Yeah.
I think we are quietly rioting and we need to be louder about it. I think it's about weaving together those spaces and places where activism is bubbling right underneath the surface. The Chinka Chinka Chonga up in Glasgow, still queer space that does that intersectionality. Stuff happening in Wales, I've just come from Cardiff. A few days before that, the Queer Arts Festival in Belfast. There's the Sick Festival. There are lots of crossovers where there are places and spaces where we are ranting, and it's about knitting them together. So don't despair, and don't be saying it is shrinking, it's getting smaller. It's not. It's getting fatter, and it's getting wilder, and it's getting more riotous, and so it should.
Encouraging words.
Thank you. Hopeful words from Julie McNamara. Thank you.
No, that's right.
Does anyone else have a question or a thought they want to share before we have a break? Okay, I just want to thank Charlotte and Liz and the interpreter and the audio describer and everyone for what's been a really interesting hour and a half, I think. So thank you very much.
Thank you.